Welcome back to Inside the Philippines. I'm glad you're here. Tonight's story doesn't start with a woman. It starts with a number, $1,400 a month. That's what Bud Kasperzak retired on. 63 years old, 41 years as a scaffolder in New Jersey, no pension worth the name, no house, no cushion. Just a Social Security check he filed for early and a pocket calculator that kept giving him the same answer. Bud isn't the kind of man these stories usually feature. He didn't go to the Philippines looking for love. He went looking for a place where his check would stretch. And I want to be clear with you up front. Nobody in this story set out to hurt him. There's no villain waiting in the wings. That's exactly what makes it worth your time. Because what nearly happened to Bud was quieter than a scam, and a lot harder to see coming. He got out. Barely. He'll tell you himself how close it was, and I think the margin is going to stick with you. Here's his story, in his own words. My name's Bud Kasperzak. Bayonne, New Jersey. Born and raised. Which, if you know anything about Bayonne, tells you most of what you need. Big family. Small house, everybody yelling. My father worked the docks. His father worked the docks. I went into scaffolding at 22 because a guy at the parish hall said they were hiring, and I wasn't doing anything else that Tuesday. 41 years. That's not a brag. That's just the number. If you don't know what a scaffolder does, we're the guys who build the thing everybody else stands on. Every high-rise you've ever walked past with a sidewalk shed on it, somebody put that up. Refinery shutdowns in Linden. Bridge work. That whole stretch of the Bronx where they were rehabbing the elevated. You get up there in February with the wind coming off the water, and your hands stop working around 10 in the morning and you keep going anyway because the crew's waiting on you. I was good at it. I want to say that once and then leave it alone. I was good at it. I could look at a job and tell you the load before anybody pulled out a chart. Guys asked for me on their crews. And here's the thing about that trade. You don't quit. Guys retire, sure. Guys get hurt. Guys drink themselves out of it. But you don't just stop. My Uncle Stash worked till he was 71, with a knee that made a sound like a screen door. So, February. I'm 59. I drive to the Union Hall like I did 4,000 other mornings. I park. It's dark, it's maybe 5:15, and the heater's finally getting warm. And I sit there. And I don't get out. I'm not being dramatic with you. I want to be honest. This is the part one've never explained right to anybody, including my daughter, including myself. There was no injury. There was no fight with anybody. Nothing happened. I just sat in the truck, and my legs would not do the thing where you swing them out onto the pavement. I watched two other guys go in. I knew both of them. I ducked down a little so they wouldn't wave. I called the foreman from the parking lot. Told him I had a doctor's appointment I forgot about. Short call, 30 seconds. He said, no problem. Take care of yourself. That was it. Never went back. Never corrected the lie, either. I let a man think I had a doctor's appointment for 4 years. Some nights that bothers me more than the money does, which tells you something about me. Probably nothing good. Now, people hear he stopped working at 59, and they picture a boat. Let me clear that up. I did side work, cash jobs, little stuff, decks and fence posts, and helping a guy in Rahway strip a roof. Work I was too old for and knew it. I made maybe 18, 20 grand a year like that, off the books, no benefits, and every winter it dried up completely, and I'd sit in my apartment and watch the account go down like a bathtub draining. In 2019, my daughter Denise's car died on the turnpike. Transmission. She's got 2 kids and a job in Perth Amboy she has to drive to. So I cashed out the annuity, the one piece of actual retirement I had, a little thing I'd been paying into since the 90s. took the penalty, took the tax hit, and bought her a used Corolla. I'd do it again. I want that on the record. I'd do it again tomorrow. But that annuity was supposed to be my floor, and I pulled it up and handed it to her. And after that, there wasn't a floor. By 2022, I'm living in a rented room over a bakery in Elizabeth, and the first MENA room. Fridge, hot plate, bathroom down the hall shared with a Guatemalan kid who worked nights. $1,100 a month for that. The bakery was actually the best part. 4 in the morning, the whole building smells like bread. And if you go down at 6, the woman gives you the ends of things. 62 comes around and I file for Social Security. Now anybody who knows the system is already wincing, because filing at 62 locks you in at a reduced rate for the rest of your life. Permanent. If I'd waited till 67, I'd have gotten close to $2,000 a month. If I'd made it to 70, more. I know that. I knew it then. I filed anyway. And the reason isn't a good reason, it's just the true one. I was tired. I was 62 years old, carrying lumber up a ladder for a guy half my age who called me Pops. And there was money sitting there that I could have right now, and right now was the only time frame I could still think in. That's what 4 years of that does. Your planning horizon shrinks down to about a week. $1,400 a month. That's the number. That's the whole story, really. Everything after this is just what that number did to me. So I'm at the diner on Elmora with Denise. This is maybe 2 months after the checks started. And I'm doing the thing where you look at the right side of the menu first. And she catches me. She says, "Dad, why are you counting like that?" I said something. I don't remember what. Something about watching my cholesterol. She let it go, which was a kindness. But that night, I got back to the room and I did it properly. Sat down with a pen and the back of a receipt from ShopRite. And understand, I'm a numbers guy in the way scaffolders are numbers guys. I don't do spreadsheets. I do the back of things. Rent, $1,100. Medicare Part B coming out of the check before I ever see it. Call it $170. Electric. Phone. Food. I ran it 3 times because I thought I was making a mistake. Negative. Every time. Not close to the line negative. Negative like there is no version of this where you eat in March. And I sat there in that room with the bread smell coming up through the floor, and I thought, okay. 41 years, and you can't afford to be alive in the state you were born in. That's not self-pity. That's just arithmetic. And I'd spent my whole life trusting arithmetic. The trouble was, I only ran the numbers on the part 1 was leaving. I never ran them on where I was going. The video that did it was called something like Retired Welder Lives Like a King on $900 a month in the Philippines. 2 in the morning. I couldn't sleep in that room anyway. The bakery ovens kicked on around 1:30 and the whole floor got warm. Guy in the video was about my age. Missing a finger, which I noticed right away because you notice that. He's sitting on a little concrete porch in Dumaguete with a San Miguel, showing the camera his electric bill. 1,100 pesos, $20. He's got a girlfriend, a scooter, and a dog, and he's laughing about how he used to shovel snow. I watched it twice. Then I watched about 400 more. I'm not exaggerating for effect, it was months of this. Every night. Retirement in the Philippines, cost of living Cebu, my monthly budget in Dumaguete, how much I spend in the Philippines on $1,000. There's a whole industry of these guys, and I want to say clearly, most of them aren't lying. That's what makes it work. The numbers in those videos are real numbers. What I ended up with was a vocabulary. I knew what a sari-sari store was. I knew what a jeepney was. I could tell you what lechon cost per kilo in Cebu, and I had never met a Filipino in my life. Why the Philippines, and not Thailand, not Mexico, not Portugal like everybody's telling you about now? I've thought about this a lot, and the honest answer is embarrassing. It's English. 41 years, my entire working life, was standing on a deck 4 floors up, screaming instructions at a guy through wind and traffic noise. Left, left, bring it around. That's the whole job, half of it anyway, being understood, fast, by somebody who can't quite hear you, in a situation where getting it wrong hurts somebody. The idea of going somewhere I couldn't do, that scared me more than being broke did. I'm serious. I could handle poor. I could not handle standing in a pharmacy pointing at my own chest, trying to explain a heart thing to a woman who doesn't speak my language. Philippines, everybody speaks English. Signs are in English. Doctors, English. That was the whole selection process. That's it. Now here's the part. One want you to hear, because you're maybe doing what I did right now, on your phone, at 2 in the morning. The videos I watched had titles like, My $700 Monthly Budget. The videos I did not watch had titles like, Foreigners Cannot Own Land in the Philippines, and Understanding Tourist Visa Extension Fees, and What Happens When You Get Sick and Have No Insurance. Those exist. They're right there. They have about 4,000 views apiece, and a guy with a bad microphone. Nobody makes a hit video about the boring part. And one didn't go looking for the boring part, because the boring part might have talked me out of it. And by then, I didn't want to be talked out of it. I wanted somebody to tell me the arithmetic worked. And 400 guys with San Miguel's told me exactly that. I told Denise at the diner on Elmora. Same booth, actually. Few months after the counting thing, I had this whole speech ready. I'd practiced it. Cost of living, the exchange rate, how I'd have money left over each month instead of running dry every March. She listened to about 90 seconds of it, and then she said, "Okay, Dad, if that's what you want." And that was it. She asked when. She asked if I needed a ride to the airport. I wanted her to fight me. I want to be honest here. I wanted her to say, "Don't go, we'll figure something out, come stay with us." And she didn't, because there wasn't room and there wasn't money and we both knew it. She was being kind. She was letting me leave with my dignity, instead of making me say out loud that I couldn't afford New Jersey. Hurt worse than if she'd yelled at me. But that's not her fault. That's mine. I sold the truck. Sold most of my tools, which I'd had some of those since the 80s. There's a set of Klein pliers I still think about. Between that and what was in the credit union, I had a little over $14,000 and a one-way ticket to Cebu with a stop in Seoul. $14,000. 41 years. I don't say that for sympathy. I say it because if you're watching this at 35, go look at your statement. Mactan Airport, about 11 at night, and you step out of the terminal and the air hits you like you opened an oven. I'd worked August in Linden next to a cracking unit, and I still wasn't ready. It's not the heat. It's that the heat is wet. Your shirt is done in 4 minutes. Just done. And the smell, diesel, and something sweet cooking. And rain, even though it wasn't raining. The taxi guy took me for a ride, and I knew it while it was happening. He wanted 800 pesos to Mandaue, maybe $15. Real fares, maybe $2.50 with the meter. And here's the thing, I argued. Because I'm from Bayonne, and you argue. I got him down to 600, and then sat in the back, feeling like I'd won something. And I was still robbed. And the whole time I'm thinking, 63 years old, first 10 minutes, and the guy already made you. But it's $11. That's the thing about that country. Everything costs so little that getting cheated doesn't register as getting cheated. It registers as a bargain. Remember that. It comes up later. The boarding house in Mandaue was 7,000 a month, about 127. Room, ceiling fan, bathroom, a plastic chair on a shared balcony. No hot water, which I thought would bother me, and didn't bother me at all after week 1. Rooster started at 4, Not near the window. In the window, basically. There's a basketball court behind the building and kids on it at 6 in the morning and again at 9 at night. And somebody down the street had a karaoke machine and a real commitment to a song called My Way. Every night. Every single night. I loved it. I want to be clear about that, because it's easy to tell these stories like the whole thing was a mistake from the jump. Those first weeks, I was happier than I'd been in 6, 7 years. Here's why. I'd walk to a carinderia around the corner where a woman named Baby, that was her actual name, everybody's got a nickname like that, served rice and adobo out of aluminum trays with the lids propped up, and it was P90, $1.60. I'd eat until I was full, get a Coke in the glass bottle, sit down, and hand her a 200 peso note, and get change back. And I'd do the arithmetic. I couldn't stop doing the arithmetic. $1,400 a month, 30 days, that's $46 a day. I was spending 12. You understand what that felt like? I'd spent 4 years looking at the right side of the menu. 4 years of the ShopRite receipt. And now I'm sitting there sweating through my shirt, listening to a guy 2 doors down murder Sinatra. And I've got money left over at the end of the day for the first time since the annuity. I bought a fan. Standing 1,200, about $22, from the Gaisano. Took me 2 days to decide on it, which, that's what 4 years does to you. 2 days over a fan. And on the 3rd day, I carried my laundry down the street, because there was a shop 3 doors from the boarding house, and I was in there maybe 6 minutes. 6 minutes, and I couldn't have told you what she looked like. That's true. People expect a different story here. There was a girl in the shop. She took my bag, she weighed it, she said something about Tuesday. There were 3 big washers going, and it was hotter inside than out, that wet detergent heat. And there was a radio on the shelf playing something with too much treble. I paid and left. Her name was Lorna, 38, though I didn't know that either. She ran the place with her brother Ray. She did the front, he did the machines, and the delivery on his tricycle. Their setup was 3 doors down from the boarding house, a concrete storefront with a hand-painted sign and a plastic stool out front where she sat when there was nothing to do. I'd handed her a 1,000 peso note, thinking it was 100. They're both sort of purplish, the 100 and the 1,000. Or they were to me at the time, and I hadn't gotten my eye in yet. So I'm maybe half a block up the road, and I hear somebody yelling behind me. Kuya! Kuya, sir! She's coming after me in flip-flops with P400 in her hand. Like $7, because that was my change, and I'd walked off. She's out of breath. She's apologizing, which is the part that gets me. She's apologizing to me. I want to be careful how I tell this, because I know what it sounds like. $7. But I'd been in that country 8 days, and I'd been overcharged for a taxi, overcharged for a SIM card, and quoted 3 different prices for the same bottle of water. Getting cheated in small amounts was just the weather. And here's a woman running down the street in the sun to hand me back $7. A scammer doesn't do that. That's what I told myself. And I kept telling myself that for the next 11 months, every single time, something didn't sit right. I'd pull that morning out like a receipt. She chased me down the street to give money back. I built the whole thing on top of that. 1 data point. 41 years of load calculations, and I anchored a load on 1 data point. Anyway, after that, I found reasons to be in the laundry. And I mean that literally. I was washing things that were already clean. She'd sit on the stool, and I'd stand in the doorway and we'd talk. And she'd correct my Tagalog, which I was getting from an app and getting wrong in ways that apparently were very funny. Also, I was speaking Tagalog in Cebu, which nobody told me for about a month that people there speak Bisaya. She let me keep doing it. She thought it was cute. She laughed at how loud I was, too. Kept telling me, "Bud, I am right here." And I'd say, "I know, sweetheart. This is my regular voice." And she'd laugh again. Nobody had found anything about me funny in years. She was widowed. Husband died in 2018, some kind of infection that got into his blood after a motorcycle accident. Went to the hospital in Cebu City, came home, went back, and that was it. No kids. She'd been running the shop since. 4 months. I want to put a marker down here because it matters. 4 months, and that woman did not ask me for 1 peso. Not one. She wouldn't let me buy her lunch for the first 6 weeks. When I tried to pay Ray for fixing a dryer belt, his own dryer, in his own shop, I don't know what I was thinking, he got genuinely offended, sort of went stiff and quiet, and Lorna took me aside after and told me not to do that again. So by month 3, I'm measuring her against everything I'd absorbed from those videos. The comment sections, the horror stories, the guy who lost his house, and she comes up clean on every single item. No allowance discussed. No sick mother in week 1. No cousin with a business idea. She had her own income. She had a Facebook full of nothing but the shop and her nieces, and she never once asked what I had. Here's what I understand now that I didn't then. All I'd proved was that she wasn't running the scam I'd studied for. That's it. That's all a checklist can do for you. I was standing there checking for a scam, and the actual thing coming at me wasn't a scam, so I never saw it, because I was looking at the wrong list. We ended up together the way people that age do, without a conversation about it. Around month 3, I moved out of the boarding house and we got a place in Mandaue proper. 2 rooms, tile floors, a real kitchen, P11,000 a month, right around $200, split. But I paid most of it because I had the check, and she had a business that made maybe $18,000 in a good month. All in, our life ran about $25,000 a month. Call it $430. Rent, food, electric, the water delivery, the internet, Ray's gas when he drove us places, everything. $1,400 coming in, $430 going out. I had never in my life had a surplus. Do you understand? Never once. Not at 25, not at 45 when I was pulling overtime at the refinery. There was always something. And now I'm 63 in a rented apartment in Mandaue with a ceiling fan, eating sinigang that a woman made for me because she wanted to. And there's $900 a month just sitting there, doing nothing. Those were the best 4 months of my adult life. I'm not going to go back and poison them because of what came after. They were real. Month 4, we went up to Bogo to meet her family. 3 hours north on the bus, P180, windows open, chickens on somebody's lap, the whole thing. Bogo is a different world from Mandaue. Cane fields, dirt roads off the highway, houses with no glass in the windows. Her mother, Nanay Priska, Ray and his wife Marites, 4 kids between them and a couple of cousins around, all in a house I could have thrown a tarp over. They put me in the good chair. They fed me first, before the kids, before Nanay. And everybody watched me eat. Lechon they'd gotten specially, which I found out later cost them real money. Nanay held onto my hand with both of hers and said something in Bisaya, and everybody laughed and nobody translated. I felt like $1,000,000. Big American in the good chair. And I'll tell you what I didn't understand, and this is the whole story, really. Being seated first isn't a compliment. It's a position. It comes with a description. They weren't honoring a guest. They were installing somebody. But nobody says that out loud. Nobody in that family would have put it that way, and I mean that. They weren't sitting there scheming. It's just how it works, and it's so obvious to everybody there that it doesn't need saying, and it was so invisible to me that I couldn't have seen it with a flashlight. The only money that changed hands that whole weekend was mine. Offered, not asked. One of the nieces, Jasmine, 7 years old, was starting at the elementary and needed shoes and the fees. $3,000. About $54. I pulled it out of my pocket in the yard and gave it to Ray, and he didn't want to take it. And I did the thing where you push it into a guy's hand and close his fingers on it. The gratitude was enormous. Way, way past $54. Nanai got emotional. Marites kept saying, "Thank you, Kuya Bud. Thank you." And I liked it. That's the honest part. One liked how it felt. $54 was the cheapest thing I ever bought, and the most expensive thing I ever did. Nanai Priska's kidneys had been going for a while. Nobody told me that. I want to be fair about it. I didn't ask either. She was an old woman in a chair in Bogo who held my hand, and I thought that was just what she was. Month 5, Lorna's on the phone in the other room for a long time, and comes out with her face doing something I hadn't seen before. Nana's at the district hospital. Kidneys have quit. She needs hemodialysis, and not once, not as a fix, twice a week for the rest of her life, or until a transplant that was never going to happen. $8,000. A session at the private center they could get her into. About $145, 16,000 pesos a week, roughly $290. Now here's the part. One need you to understand, because if you've watched a lot of these videos, you've already decided what happened next. And you're wrong. They didn't ask me. Nobody called me. Nobody sat me down. Lorna told me the situation because we lived together and she was upset. And then she stopped talking about it, and I found out 3 weeks later how they'd been handling it. They sold the pig. There was a pig behind the house in Bogo that Ray had been fattening since March, and they sold it early and light for maybe 10,000 howlers. Marites pawned her wedding ring at a place in Bogo town. And then, when that ran out, Ray went to a woman who lends money in the barangay. 5-6, they call it. Borrow 5, pay back 6. And that's per month. 60% a year, near enough. On a loan against a tricycle that was the family's only income. I found out because I was looking for the tricycle registration papers to help Ray with something else entirely. And the papers weren't there. And he wouldn't look at me. That's how I found out. Not because anybody worked me. Because a proud man wouldn't meet my eye in his own yard. And here's where you're waiting for me to say I was manipulated. I wasn't. I want to say that clearly for the record. I walked into it with both eyes open and my chest out. I said, I got it. 2 words. That's the whole story. Right there, if you want to skip to the end. I got it. I paid off the 5-6 lady, which was P11,000 by then with the interest. I put P96,000 into the dialysis over about 6 weeks, 12 sessions, $8,000 each, which is right around $1,650. $1,650 out of 14,000. 12% of everything I had on this earth in 6 weeks. And I want to tell you the truth about how it felt. It felt good. Not good like generous, good like relief. Like a muscle you haven't used in years finally getting used. I stood in the hallway of that dialysis center in Bogo, plastic chairs, a fan bolted to the ceiling turning about half speed, a wall calendar from a feed company 2 years out of date that smell hospitals have there, which is bleach over something else. And I handed a receptionist an envelope and she wrote in a ledger with a ballpoint pen. And I felt like myself for the first time since the parking lot. You get that? For 4 years, I'd been a man who quit. a man who told a lie to his foreman and hid in a truck. And here I'm a guy who says I got it, and then actually got it. I wasn't buying love. I want to be precise. I was buying back the guy who used to walk onto a job and have people go, "Okay, Bud's here?" Nobody in that family ever once said thank you for the dialysis in a way that felt small. Nanai cried. Lorna took it worse than anybody, which surprised me at the time. She got quiet for about a week. Then she started opening the shop at 6 instead of 8 and staying till 9, and taking in dry cleaning she had to walk over to another place to get done, making about 200 on each one. She lost weight. I told her to knock it off, and she said, in this flat voice, "I have to pay you back." I said, "Sweetheart, there's nothing to pay back." And she looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language, which I had. This is the thing nobody explained to me, and I'm going to try to explain it to you, because it took me a long time, and it cost me. There's a thing there called utang na loob. People translate it debt of gratitude. And that's not wrong, but it's like translating a bridge as a long, flat thing. It's not a debt you can pay. That's the point of it. Somebody does something for you that changes your situation. And now there's a permanent cord between you, and you carry it, and you look for ways to honor it forever. It's not transactional. It's actually the opposite of transactional. It's why she couldn't just say thanks and move on. She was in it now, and being in it was heavy, and she was trying to lift the weight with a laundry shop. So it ran both directions, and both of us were stuck. She felt she owed me something she could never settle. And this is the ugly half. I liked being owed. I liked being the man the cord ran to. But here's the arithmetic problem underneath all of it. And this is the part that actually broke me. That family now had evidence. Direct, physical, receipted evidence that Bud Kasperzak could produce P96,000 in 6 weeks. And in Bogo, where a good month for that whole household was maybe 15,000. All in, a man who can produce P96,000 is a man who has more somewhere. That's not greed. That's just reasonable inference. In their world, money like that comes from a source, and sources keep sourcing. They had a cousin in Dubai sending home $20,000 a month for 9 years straight. That's what a person abroad is. That's the whole OFW thing. You go out, you send back, forever. I was a source. Sources don't run dry, and I never corrected it. That's mine, not theirs. I could have sat in that yard at any point and said, "Listen, here's what I actually am. $1,400 a month, and it will never be more than that. Not next year, not ever. That's the top. There's nothing above this." I didn't. And it wasn't to trick anybody. I want to be clear. I wasn't running a con on them. It was that saying it out loud would have meant standing in front of a family who'd put me in the good chair and admitting I was a broke old man who ran away from New Jersey because he couldn't afford it. 41 years of being the guy who could handle it. You don't put that down? You'd rather go broke than put it down. I have met about 900 guys like me in that trade, and I'm telling you, not one of us would have said it either. The requests changed after that. Not in size at first, in shape. They stopped coming to me. They started coming through Lorna. Somebody would call her, and she'd be on the phone. And then that evening she'd mention something while we were eating, sort of sideways. Ray's oldest needs the fee for the exam, the roof over the kitchen in Bogo. And I'd say, sure, of course. How much? Saving face. Nobody wants to ask the Kano directly, because if he says no, everyone's humiliated and it can't be taken back. So it goes through the channel, and the channel is the woman who loves you. And the answer is always yes, because it's her mouth it's coming out of. Around month 7, I heard the word for the first time. We're in BOGO, and one of the cousins is talking about the roof, and he says something to Ray, and Ray says, "Ah, see, Bud will fix. We'll fix. Not can. Will." They said it warmly. That's what I need you to get. They said it the way you'd say it about a good son. The tricycle went first. Which is funny, in a way, because the tricycle was the thing I paid off the loan on. And about 6 weeks later, the engine let go on the highway outside BOGO with 4 passengers in it. Ray's tricycle wasn't a toy. I want to explain that for anybody who's never been. That's a Honda 125 with a sidecar welded on, and it's a business. He runs a route from the barangay into BOGO town. P15 ahead, maybe 40 runs on a good day. That machine was the family's income. Not extra income. The income. Engine was shot. Frame was worse. He'd been welding patches on it himself for years, and the mounts were cracked through. And I looked at it and, well, 41 years of looking at steel. I could have told you that thing was done from 20 feet away, and I did. And I said it with a certain amount of pleasure, if I'm honest. Nice to be the guy who knows something again. Full rebuild. Engine. Mounts. New sidecar body. Brakes. Came to P45,000. About 775. I didn't even do the arithmetic on that one. That's the truth. 6 months earlier, I spent 2 days deciding on a fan. And now I'm approving $775 over a plate of pancit in about 90 seconds. And I'll give you the reason I told myself, because it was a good reason. It was an investment. That tricycle earns $800 a day. Fix it, and the family isn't coming to me for the small stuff anymore. It pays for itself in 2 months. That's real. That's not stupid. If you'd said it to me in a union hall, I'd have agreed with you. But here's the other reason, the one underneath. Saying no to Ray would have required a conversation. And the conversation would have had to include the sentence I couldn't say, that I didn't actually have it. That $775 was a real number to me, and not pocket change. So I said yes, because yes was cheaper than the truth. Write that down. Cost me more than the tricycle did. Running total, if you're keeping score, and by this point I wasn't. Dialysis and the 5'6" lady, P$107,000. Tricycle, P$45,000. Little stuff all along the way. The school fees, a roof repair in BOGO, a niece's confirmation, medicine from the mercury drug about every other week. Plus, our own life at P$25,000 a month, of which the check covered most, but not all, once I started paying for things in BOGO out of the same pocket. Then the washer. Lorna's shop had 2 machines, industrial front loaders, the kind that eat everything you put in them, both of them older than the business. One had a bearing going and made a noise like a jet taking off during spin, and when it finally quit, and it was going to quit, the shop was done. You can't run a laundry on one washer. A proper replacement, second-hand from a supplier in Cebu City with a warranty, was $120,000, around $2,150. And this is where it broke, because I couldn't just say I got it. I remember exactly where I was standing. Back room of the shop, that smell of hot detergent and damp concrete, and Ray's giving me the pitch. And he was embarrassed doing it. He'd written the numbers on the back of a claim ticket. Projected income. How many months to pay it back. He'd done actual work on it. He was proud of it, and mortified at the same time. And I'm standing there nodding and doing a completely different set of math behind my face. Because I knew what was in the account. Not exactly, but roughly, the way you know how much gas is in the truck without looking. And P$120,000 wasn't there in a way I could just hand over. So I started thinking in shapes. That's the only way I can describe it. Not decisions. Shapes. Maybe I put down half now and pay the rest monthly out of the check. Maybe I skipped the dental work. I had a molar that needed a crown. P $18,000. Been putting it off anyway. Maybe I go down to one meal I pay for. And then I thought about calling Denise. I want to be honest with you about this because it's the ugliest 30 seconds in the whole story. I sat there, and I genuinely thought about calling my daughter, the one whose car I bought with my retirement, the one who works in Perth Amboy with 2 kids, and asking her to send me money for a washing machine in the Philippines. And I got up and went outside and stood in the road, and I felt sick. Physically. Like the fish had gone bad. I didn't call her. I want that on the record too. But I thought about it. And a man who's thinking about that is already a lot further down the road than he knows. I told Ray I'd figure something out. That's what I said. I'll figure something out. Which in that culture and in mine means yes with a delay on it. And right around then, same week, might have been the same few days, the house came up. We're in Bogo on a Sunday. Nanai's better, relatively speaking, dialysis 3 times a month now instead of twice a week, because that's what the doctor had settled on, and everybody's in the yard after church, and one of the cousins is pacing off a rectangle at the side of the house with his sandals, heel to toe, and Ray's got a stick drawing in the dirt. 2 bedrooms, concrete block, tin roof, tied onto the side of Nane's place so she wouldn't be alone at night. For me and Lorna. Somewhere to be when the old woman needs somebody there. Everybody's excited. They'd price the hollow blocks. They'd talk to a guy about the sand. Somebody said $600,000 all in, which is about $2,800, and they said it like it was a solved problem. Our house, they kept saying. Bud and Lorna's house. And I stood in that yard with a warm red horse in my hand, listening to people I'd come to love, plan a home for me on ground I could never own. And I didn't say one word about it, because I wanted it to be true. Now, I'd like to tell you I didn't know about the land thing. I knew. Sort of. It had gone past me in one of those 400 videos, Foreigners Can't Own Land, and I'd filed it under things that happen to other people, and I had absolutely never thought about what it meant on a Sunday afternoon in a yard in Bogo with a stick drawing in the dirt. That's what knowing something is worth, if you don't apply it. 2 things happened after that, both small, both in the same week. First was Lorna stopped telling me about problems. I noticed it because the washer stopped coming up. Ray mentioned nothing. Then I found out the bearing had actually gone, and they'd been running one machine and turning customers away for 11 days, and nobody said a word to me about it. I thought that was consideration. She's not pressuring me. That's what I told myself, and I felt sort of grateful for it. Took me a while to understand. It's the other thing. Problems don't stop over there. They go underground. Saving face. If nobody says it out loud, then nobody has to be shamed by the answer. And meanwhile, the problem sits there, getting worse in the dark. Second was the immigration office. Tourist visa, you extend it. I'd been doing that, and I'd been letting Lorna handle the paperwork side because she was better at it. And honestly, I hadn't looked at what it cost. This time I went myself. The office in Mandaue, plastic chairs, ceiling fan, a whole morning gone. $1,400, about $170 for 2 months. And it's not the money. It's that I stood at that counter and had a moment of not being certain the card would go through. 63 years old, little bit of sweat on the back of my neck that wasn't the heat. Watching a woman swipe a card and not knowing. It went through. Of course it went through. But I walked out onto that street with the jeepneys blowing diesel at me, and I got out my phone right there on the sidewalk, in the sun, and I opened the banking app for the first time in I don't know how long, $2,800. I stood on that sidewalk in Mandaue with a jeepney barker yelling, "Colon, colon, colon," about 4 feet from my ear, and I looked at that number for probably a full minute. 14,000 when I landed. 11 months. $11,200. Gone. And here's the thing that got me. Standing there, I couldn't name where most of it went. I could name the big ones. Dialysis. The 5'6" lady. The tricycle. That's about $2,800 right there. The other $8,000 was air. It was $3,000 here and $5,000 there, and covering the whole tab at Mang Inasal when 9 people came, and the fare to Bogo, and back 40 times, and the pasalubong you have to bring every single time you go up there, because if you show up empty-handed to a house where they fed you lechon, you're an animal. Little stuff. All of it reasonable. All of it, individually. A thing I'd do again. That's how it goes. Nobody takes $11,000 off you. It leaves in $3 increments while you're being a decent guy. I put the phone away and I went home, and I didn't say anything to anybody, which is a thing I'd like you to notice about me. Big, loud Jersey guy, and when it actually mattered, I went quiet for 9 days. The Sunday after that, we were up in Bogo. Mass at the parish church there, the one on the plaza. Concrete, big open doors, ceiling fans that don't do anything, everybody in their good clothes and sweating through them, little kids on the tile floor at the back, because there's no room. Somebody's phone goes off during the homily, and nobody cares. I'm not Catholic in any way that counts. I was baptized. My mother would have said I was Catholic. I went because everybody went and because it was cool in there for about the first 10 minutes. Afterward, everybody's out on the steps talking, and Lorna's got Nane's arm and they're walking slow, and I'm standing off to the side in the shade of the wall. And Maritis comes over. Now, Maritis, Ray's wife, 4 kids. She's maybe 42, small, always doing something with her hands. In 11 months, I don't think she'd said 40 words to me directly. She wasn't cold, she was just busy and shy about her English, which was actually fine. She stands next to me and looks out at the plaza and doesn't look at me at all. And she says, "Kuya bud, they are already buying the blocks." I said what? She says the hollow blocks for the extension. Ray ordered them Thursday. And the sand is coming next week, and Nane has been telling everybody at the market that her American will build the house before the rains. And then she said the part one thought about every day since. She said, "Kuya, you know you cannot own it. The land is Nanai's. Foreigner cannot own land here. Whatever you build, it is hers, and then it is Ray's. And if something happens with you and Lorna, you have nothing. You cannot even come inside." I said something like, "Well, we're not, Lorna and I." And she said, "I am not saying they will do it to you." She said it fast. She said, "They love you. Nobody is thinking this. That is why I am telling you. Because nobody is thinking it." And then somebody called her, and she went. That's it. That's the big revelation. A woman I barely knew, standing in the shade outside a church in Bogo, telling me a fact I could have read on any government website in 4 minutes. She wasn't warning me about her family. I want to be really clear about that because I know how this genre goes, and I know what people want me to say. She wasn't ratting anybody out. There was nothing to rat out. She was warning me that nobody in that family thought of me as a separate person with separate assets. I was family, and family money is family money. and it never crossed one of their minds that the guy in the good chair could end up with nothing. That's not a scam. That's a category error. Theirs and mine both. I got a red horse from a sari-sari across the plaza and sat on a low wall and got out a pen. No paper, so I wrote on the back of a jeepney receipt and then on my hand, which, I'm 63 years old, sitting on a wall in the sun, doing sums on my hand like a kid cheating on a test. But I did it properly. First time in 11 months. I did it the way I'd do a load calc, 'cause that's the one thing I actually know how to do. Income. $1,400, fixed. Never goes up. Never, well, it goes up with the cost of living adjustment, which is what, $40 a year? Don't get excited. Our life in Mandu, about $25,000. That's $450. Fine. BOGO, ongoing. Dialysis 3 times a month at $8,000 is $24,000. That's $435 alone, every month, forever, or until she died. And I'm not going to pretend I didn't think about that, and I'm not proud of thinking about it. That's $885 against $1,400, leaves $500 a month for everything else. Visa, medicine, my own teeth, the fare, the pasalubong, the 400 small kindnesses, plus the washer, P120,000, plus the house, $600,000, which was $10,800, which was nearly 4 times what I had left in the world. I ran it 3 times. Same as the receipt in Elizabeth. Same answer, different continent. 90 days. At the rate I was actually going, not the rate I told myself, I was at 0 in about 90 days. And 0 there isn't 0 in New Jersey. 0 there means a 63-year-old man on a tourist visa he can't afford to extend, who cannot legally work, not teaching, not anything. They'll deport you and blacklist you, with no health insurance, in a country where a heart thing costs $200,000 up front before anybody touches you. And the only way home is a plane ticket he doesn't have and a phone call to his daughter. 41 years I calculated loads. I could tell you what a deck would hold with a glance. And I had never, not one time in my life, run the numbers on myself. I didn't confront anybody. There was nobody to confront. That's the part that makes this story different, and I know it's less satisfying. There's no phone with somebody else's messages on it, no other boyfriend in Norway, no cousin who was actually a husband. I went home to Mandu, and on the Tuesday I sat Lorna down at the table with the fan going, and I told her the truth. I said, $1,400 a month. That's it. That's not the interest. That's not the allowance. That's not the part 1 let you see. That's the whole thing. It doesn't grow. There's no house in New Jersey. There's no pension coming. I had $14,000, and now I have $2,800. And I turned the phone around and showed her the account. She looked at it for a long time. Then she started crying, and it wasn't the crying you're picturing. She wasn't crying about the money. She was crying because she said it about 4 different ways, and this is the closest I can get it. She said, I let them think. I let them think you are rich. I knew, and I did not stop them. And she had known, some of it. Not the number. But she knew I flinched at the washer, and she'd let it ride, because saying it out loud would have shamed me, and shaming me was worse than anything in her book. That's the thing about saving face. It's kindness. It's kindness that will bury you. We sat there a long while with the fan going and the neighbor doing my way 2 houses down, because of course he was. And here's what she didn't say. She didn't say, stay anyway. She apologized, and she cried, and she said she was sorry maybe 30 times, and she never once said, we'll manage, or it doesn't matter, or don't go. I'm not going to hold that against her. 20 months of thinking about it, and I still won't. What was she going to say? Her mother needed $24,000 a month to stay alive, and I was a man with $2,800. She had a mother. I had arithmetic. Both of us were telling the truth. Both of us were wrong about the other one. That's the whole thing. I paid for the tricycle. I want to start there because it matters to me. The rebuild was already done, and Ray had already committed to the shop in Bogo Town, so that P45,000 was mine, and I paid it, every peso. And I paid 2 more dialysis sessions after the conversation at the table, 16,000, about $290, because Nane was mid-cycle, and you don't stop a thing like that in the middle. I decided which debts were mine, and I settled those. The washer I did not buy. The house I did not build. Not one block. Not one bag of sand. That was the hardest phone call of my life. And it wasn't even a phone call. It was me standing in the back of the shop with Ray and saying it out loud finally. I can't. Not can't right now. Can't ever. This is what I am. He took it better than I did. He shook my hand. He said, "Sorry, Kuya," which nearly killed me, because what's he sorry for? Then Martes got the sister-in-law in Cebu City to co-sign a proper bank loan for the washer at about 18%, which is nothing there. They had it in 5 weeks. Without me. They'd have had it a year earlier without me. Probably. Because I was the easy answer that stopped anybody looking for the hard one. That's a thing I think about. I wasn't just a source of money. I was a reason nobody had to solve anything. I left Mandaue about 6 weeks later. Took the ferry down to Dumaguete, the city from that first video, which, yeah, I know. 12 hours on a boat with my 2 bags and a plastic chair on the deck. 20 months ago now. Here's where I am, and I'll give you the numbers because numbers are the only thing I've got to offer anybody. Room in a house in Darrow, $9,000 a month, about $160. Landlady's name is Feely. She's got a mango tree and a dog with 3 good legs. I eat at the same carinderia most days, $120 a plate. I run about $21,000 a month total, right around $380, on a check of $1,400. I've got $12,600 in a BPI account. It hasn't moved down in 14 months. Went up a little, actually. Then I needed the crown on that molar, P18,000, done properly at a clinic on Perdices Street. And I want to say, the dentistry there is excellent, and about a fifth of what I'd have paid in Elizabeth. Visa the First actually understand now. I'm on the long stay extension. I know what it costs. I know the date. It's written on a calendar on the wall. I looked into the SRRV, and the deposit's $10,000 for my age bracket, and I don't have it, and I'm not pretending I do. I've got 2 rules. Nothing leaves my hand that I can't afford to lose. And I don't put money into anything I can't legally own, which in that country means a condo or nothing, and it means nothing. I lost $11,200. That was most of what 41 years came to. I lost a year, and I lost the guy who says I got it, which sounds like nothing but was the actual thing I came here to be. But I'll tell you what that money bought. It bought about 8 months of life for a woman named Priska, who is still, today, alive in Bogo. It got a family out of a 5-6 loan that was eating them. It fixed a tricycle that 4 kids eat from. I don't want it back. I've thought about that a lot, and I mean it. I don't want the money back. I want the year, maybe. Lorna and I still talk. Messenger, every couple of weeks. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now, here's my piece. And then I'm done. 41 years I calculated loads. That's what a scaffolder does. You look at a structure, and you work out what it holds, and what happens when you're wrong. Everything holds, until it doesn't. The guys who get hurt aren't the reckless ones. They're the ones who got comfortable, who walked the same deck 400 times and stopped checking it. I ran that calculation on every job I ever stood on. Ran it for other men's lives. Never once ran it on my own. Not at 59 in that parking lot. Not at 62 when I filed early because I was tired. Not for 11 months, while I said yes to everything with a mouth that had no numbers behind it. I finally ran it sitting on a wall outside a church, writing on my own hand, about a year late. And the thing that saved me wasn't that I'm smart. It was that the arithmetic was so simple even I couldn't get around it. 90 days to zero. There was no version where I told myself a story about that. So if you're the guy at 2 in the morning watching the videos, go ahead. Go. I'm not telling you not to go. I'm still here, and it's a better life than the room over the bakery. But do 2 things first. Tell them your real number, out loud, early, before anybody loves you enough to be embarrassed by it. And never, ever put your money into something the law says can't be yours. That's it. That's 41 years and $11,000, and you can have it for free. You've just heard from Bud Kasperzak, 63 years old, formerly of Bayonne, New Jersey, currently of Dumaguete. I want to leave you with something because I think this story is easy to misread. There's no villain in it. Nobody lied to Bud. No one ran a scheme. A family in Bogo assumed a man who could produce 96,000 pesos in 6 weeks had more where that came from, which, in a country where millions of people abroad send money home every month of their lives, is not an unreasonable thing to assume. And a proud man from New Jersey couldn't bring himself to say the words that would have corrected them. That's it. That's the whole machine. 2 decent assumptions grinding against each other for 11 months. Most retirements on $1,400 a month don't fail because someone stole from you. They fail from arithmetic and silence. So if you're planning this, and a lot of you watching are, there are 2 questions worth more than every budget video on this platform combined. Have I told the people around me my real number, the true one, the one that doesn't grow? And can I legally own the thing I'm about to pay for? Ask those early. Ask them out loud. It costs you nothing but your pride, and pride is the most expensive thing Bud packed in his suitcase. If you've lived some version of this, we'd like to hear it. The comments are where a lot of people find out they're not the only one. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves out there. This has been Inside the Philippines.